Okay.
Okie dokie.
Thank you. All right. You ready to switch it on?
Yeah, man, do it.
There we go.
I can see my house from there.
Yeah. Did I switch it on? I switched it on. Hey, it's on.
Oh.
Oh, hello.
Hey.
Hello, chat.
Long time no see.
How are y'all doing? We need to come up with a better title for the stream. We're getting set up for a talk with an astronaut right now. And she's going to be doing a presentation, do like a Q&A sort of thing, and we're going to share that via live stream. So we are over in the Litnick Theater at Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum right now. And in fact, I think that our faces are being shown throughout the rest of the museum.
Oh. Well, that's good.
So come and check out the Kerbal Space Academy tomorrow down in Hangar Deck 3. I think
Do
we
it.
are.
It'll be a good time.
But that's our plan right now. We wanted to make sure that the audio was good and that sort of stuff for the presentation. We do appreciate y'all hanging out. I know we sort of spooled up the stream. Let me pop into chat and just make sure that we are good to go. But again, we're at Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. It's not Fleet Week. I almost just said Fleet Week.
Space and Science Festival.
It's the Space and Science Festival, yeah.
Great.
It's fantastic. All day yesterday, all day today, they have a bunch of exhibits. There's a bunch of people from NASA that have booths. You can go and check out some of the gear the astronauts use in the NVL. I know that was James Webb back there.
Oh yeah, they had James Webb. They had people from Space Launch System. All over the place. Insight too.
And NASA Insight was there. That's right.
Insight, yeah.
I saw the seismometer where you can jump on the deck of the carrier and it'll show you the little earthquake that you make or whatever. But anyways,
from NASA Eyes this year as well.
NASA Eyes, Kevin from JPL was there as well. So
yeah, it's great. It's a good time.
anyways, hello. Status check. Status check. There we go. So if you're in chat right now and you can hear us, let us know how things are going. We just want to make sure that everything's good to go before the presentation begins here with astronaut Sunita Williams. So while we're hanging out, you're going to look up Sunita Williams on Wikipedia. So we can have some facts.
Oh, okay.
My headset's going to fall off.
I mean, that's going to be a long wiki page.
It is going to be a long wiki page, isn't it?
I'm not going to lie. It's a pretty long one.
Yeah. Okay, so that sounds good. Video's good, audio's good. Excellent, excellent. We're not exciting. You're not going to be looking at us. What you're going to be looking at is the stage behind you. I do want to check on one more thing, right? There's going to be tons of people coming in and everything.
They're starting to let people in, so
yeah, we are starting to let the people in, yeah. You know what we need to do? We need to check the battery power on this as well. Hey, Chad, hang out for a second. It's full. Nice. Okay. The astronaut walking behind us, apparently.
Yeah.
That's
just astronauts.
That's right, EJ.
There's in fact two. There's two astronauts.
Oh yeah, there are, because Mike's here too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
We've done some things in space. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so people are going to be filing into the theater here. Astronomy night sort of got shut down a little bit. Too much cloud.
Cloudy. Clouds.
No astronomy night tonight.
I mean,
but we are
going
to
look at clouds.
We're going to point it at buildings and stuff.
That's cool too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not stars.
Okay. I'm going to ask for a sound check right quick just to make sure we're good to go, okay? And don't worry, you don't have to just look at us. So if you're in the museum and you can hear us right now, sort of a line forming to get into the Litnick Theater that's all the way to the front of the ship. If you're watching from home, we'll be able to share that with you. And then there's some overflow seating. If you don't make it down here in time when we close the doors, I assume you're able to hear us. But there'll be some seating outside where you can watch the stream so you can still sort of partake. Excuse me. When can we get the on that? Make sure that technique's good. Because we're piping into the stream right now, and we'll just make sure we can hear it.
Over here? You can start tomorrow.
It's super quiet,
Talk should
but
be
I can deal with it
started.
on my end. Yeah, I'll dial it in from here.
Yes, come here.
So we're streaming to Twitch right now. Yes. Yeah, we're streaming on Twitch. You know Twitch? Nice. No, on
People
Twitch.
are starting to pile in over here.
Yeah.
I have a funny feeling it's going to fill up pretty quick.
Just 1 second, okay? I gotta get this audio set up. I may have to dial this in on the fly because that's like super quiet right now.
Talk should be starting soon.
Yeah, 8:15, I think.
Yeah, 8:15 is the start time. So I believe the talk while you're dialing in.
Yeah, go for it. No, go.
Talks about commercial. This talk is about commercial crew.
Yeah.
So that's if you're unfamiliar with commercial crew, it's a contract that was put out by NASA to move astronauts to the International Space Station. There were two prime contractors selected for commercial crew: SpaceX, Space Exploration Technologies, and Boeing, and they each independently developed spacecraft that would be used for moving cargo and crew to the International Space Station, which is our outpost in low Earth orbit with NASA's international partners. SpaceX is developing the Dragon 2 capsule, which is a derivative of the Dragon capsule, which is what they're using to resupply the ISS right now. The Dragon 2 is the variant that has environmental control and life support systems in it that's designed to move people. And Boeing is working on the CST-100 Starliner capsule, which is also a low Earth orbit capsule that's designed to just move people to the space station. Commercial crew should be ramping up here at the very earliest start of next year. But we should be able to cap off 2018 with SpaceX if everything goes to plan. SpaceX should be launching a demo mission by the end of this year, and Boeing will be launching its demo mission for Starliner right after that. They're going to do unmanned flights, and then they're going to do one man-rated flight test, and then they're going to start moving people to the ISS like a taxi cab.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Should be pretty good. Hopefully we get some good news.
Do we know which mission she's going to be on? Because she's one of the commercial crew members.
Starliner.
Starliner.
Yep,
Okay, so she is Starliner.
Starliner.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So again, y'all, we have about 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes before the presentation starts. We're going to go ahead and show the NASA logo for now. We're going to make sure that everything's good to go. I'm Das. This is EJ. We're live at the Intrepids here at Space Museum. It's a good time out here at the Space and Science Festival. Let's just put it that way.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
If you're in the New York area, you gotta come out.
Oh, yeah.
And you like space.
It's Saturday, it's Sunday at the museum. There's all the NASA booths. We'll be here if you want to come play Kerbal with us or come hang out. We'll be doing some more streams and stuff, so it's definitely worth your while to come on by.
All right, going that way.
Sorry, you got a couple of us really.
Oh, really?
Okay. Oh, nice. So I've got everything in there to mount the phone on the tripod. Got a little arm and everything. I'm not even kidding, dude. We should use it. In the far left vertical pocket, there's a phone mount. You can't miss it. Yeah. Okay. And in the bottom left-hand pocket here, so this pocket here, there's a clamp and a little gimbal arm thing. Yeah. So there should be a clamp in there as well. No, like a pincher clamp. Nope, should be underneath that. Yeah, there we go. So, check this thing out, dude.
Lower third. They're saying lower third.
Oh, the lower third needs to be changed. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Spelling is correct. Sunita Williams. You got it.
Actually, I watched her watching his face.
That's good.
There you are.
You got it. No, it's perfect.
Good catch, Chad. Good catch.
Hey Joe, how's it going? You'll get my text message probably in about 10 minutes. I'm so happy to see you. Did you have fun at the fun fair? Good. No, that's not the best idea.
food is the best thing ever, man. Look. No, look at this. It's all loose.
Yeah. Sometimes the future will be automated.
Hello.
Oh.
Good evening. Hi. I'm Mike Massimino. I am an advisor here at the Intrepid Museum, and I'm a former astronaut, and it's my pleasure tonight to introduce my friend and colleague, Sunny Williams. Thank you very much for coming. We have a great crowd. It's great to see the young people here as well. One announcement, after Sunny finishes her presentation, after we're done with questions and answers, she will be signing autographs. And we're going to do that here, right, Ellen? It'll be here. So you'll have a chance to meet Sunny in person after she's done speaking. Sunny has a very interesting background. I'm really delighted that she came to New York. She spoke earlier today to some of my students at Columbia University, and now she's here tonight to speak with all of you. She comes from Massachusetts. She went to Needham High School in Massachusetts, near Boston. So she, like me, we're Red Sox fans. Just so you know. Okay. Just so you know, most school. Okay, we won't get into that. All right. She grew up in Boston and went to the Naval Academy. And she graduated from the Naval Academy and got a certification as a Navy diver. And then went to flight school and became a naval aviator, a helicopter pilot, and flew combat with the Navy in helicopters. And she became there's a lot of things going on to make this happen, of course. I'm just summarizing. And she went on to become a test pilot. And then following that career in the Navy, which also included getting a master's degree in engineering, she was selected as an astronaut. She became an astronaut in 1998. I was an astronaut just before Sunny was in 1996. So we got a chance to work together at NASA for many years. Sunny's had a great career at NASA, and she, unlike me, is still there doing really exciting things. I get to do exciting things here in New York, but Sunny's still there in Houston as an active astronaut. When she first came to the office, she was heavily involved in many things, including getting people ready to go to the International Space Station. It was just getting ready to launch the first elements, getting a crew on board a few years later, and she was pivotal in doing that, working very closely with the Russians in Russia for a lot of the time when she first started. She then got assigned to a space flight. She launched back in December of '06 and landed on that first mission in June of '07. She did 4 spacewalks during that mission. She also ran a marathon, and she ran a marathon in space on a treadmill on the day of the Boston Marathon. And when was the triathlon? That was, all right, so then she came back from that, and she also was a leader in our office. She was the deputy chief of the astronaut office when she came back from that flight, and was very helpful to all the astronauts, both in technical issues and other non-technical issues that were going on at the time. She's a great person to go to when you needed help, a great leader in that job. She flew again a few years later, back to the space station, this time not on the shuttle. First trip up and down on the shuttle, second trip up and down on a Soyuz spacecraft. It's pretty exciting. We've got a shuttle in the shuttle pavilion. We also have a Soyuz there as well. If you've seen that, Sunny flew in one of those spacecraft as well. Very unusual for an astronaut to have those experiences. On that second flight, another 3 spacewalks, the triathlon, right? And she came back from that, and soon after got assigned a few years ago to be part of the very first astronauts who will fly on the new spaceships NASA is developing in partnership with SpaceX and Boeing. Sunny will be flying on the Boeing vehicle. You'll be on the first flight with people on them, and be going to the space station a 3rd time. So it's hard to explain to you how unique and how cool all that is, to have that much time. She's over 300 days in space, 7 spacewalks, and to have flown on the shuttle, the Soyuz, and now getting ready to fly on the new vehicle that'll be taking us into the future. All right, I get you ready? I'm going to be quiet. I can go on all day talking about her. She's a great person. You're going to love it. Please welcome Sunny Williams.
Wow, it's a great crowd. Thanks for coming. This is pretty awesome, and there's a lot of young people here, which is cool because I'm getting older. Like Mike mentioned, you know, I became an astronaut probably a lot a long time ago, before a lot of you guys were born. And right after I became an astronaut, if you guys know this, I don't know if you know, but in 2000 we launched the first people to the International Space Station. So as long as most of these sort of shorter people than me are in this room, as long as you guys have been alive, there have been people living in space. Isn't that cool? Yeah, you haven't known a day that somebody hasn't been in space. That's pretty awesome. When Mike and I were growing up, that wasn't the case. We'd wait for the mission to go, we'd watch the astronauts, and then they'd come home, and then nobody would be in space. So it's pretty unique that you guys, through your whole life, people have been in space. And I'll show you where they've been on the International Space Station. But before that, it is Friday. It is during a school week and a work week, so we have a quiz, okay? And Mike already gave you some answers, potentially, so maybe you can figure it out. So, anybody know where this is? Anybody? Yes, ma'am? No. Wait, let me tell you. There's a river right here, and where the river bends, just starting to make the big bend, but right before that, there's a stadium there.
There's Logan.
Yeah, that's where the Red Sox play. Woo! So that is Boston. That's my hometown. So I just had to tell you about that. But most importantly about Boston, a little farther down from Boston is a place where my dog was when I was up in space. And so I was keeping a sharp eye on that place. Because, you know, I missed my family, of course. My husband gets mad when I tell people that I miss my dog. But I really did miss my dog, probably the most. Because on the International Space Station, you can pick up the phone and you can make a phone call. And you can talk to people back at home, and you can see how they're doing, and they can tell you what's going on. But with my dog, I didn't really get to talk to him. I could hear him barking in the background, but anyway, let me tell you potentially where he was. Anybody recognize this? So these are all pictures from space, I think you might know, right? It's a little bit south of Boston, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod. Both of these views are with cameras with big long lenses, so we can really see where we live. But a little farther away, this is actually what we see when we look out the window. It's pretty spectacular. You actually see that the Earth is round. When I was on my first flight, it was so cool. When I was on my first flight, I went up to I'm on the mid-deck of the shuttle, you know, where there's no windows. So I fly up to the flight deck, and my commander says, "Congratulations," gives me a big high five. "You've made it to space." I get my astronaut wings. He says, "Woohoo!" And I look out the window. I'm like, "They're right. All those people in school who told me the Earth was round, they're right. And by golly, it's round." So just take that. That's one lesson that you've learned tonight, right? The Earth is round. So I feel like I'll have accomplished something. All right. Maybe we failed at the first quiz, but maybe you'll get the second quiz. All right, you know where that is. And I think up in the corner there, up in the far left corner, you can see where that other bad team plays. But anyway, more importantly, where the Red Sox clinched the ALC championships just last night. Anyway, okay, moving on. More importantly, we'll get off baseball and we'll get back to space. How about that? Okay. How about if we wait for questions until the end, because I might answer some of your questions on the way. Next, I'm going to just show you what it's like to train and work and get ready to go to space. Well, I actually shouldn't call it work because it's just fun, but just how you train and get ready to go to space, and then what a space mission is sort of made up of. It's a culmination of a bunch of space flights that have happened recently. Like Mike mentioned, now we're launching, since the space shuttle has retired, now we're launching with the Russians on the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. So we launch out of Kazakhstan. It's almost 12 hours around the Earth, you know, totally on the opposite side of the Earth where we launch from. But we all get to the International Space Station, and so this is how we do it right now. And then in the near future, we'll be launching on these new American rockets and spacecraft, the Dragon and the Starliner, and I'll tell you about that a little bit after this movie about how you train and get ready to space. Okay? Sound good? All right, I'm going to move over here because I'm going to narrate, so I'm going to watch it from over here, as you guys can pay attention to the screen. Okay, boom. So there's a lot of training that goes on. It takes about 2.5 years to actually get ready to go to space. Part of that training is in Houston, parts in Russia, parts in Germany, parts in Canada, and parts in Japan. One of the real things that we do, besides for fly simulators, we fly jets. And part of the reason we fly jets is so that we can understand what happens if something goes wrong and how to handle those emergencies. We get ready to do spacewalks and do robotic operations on the International Space Station, working with our mission control teams. We do things with virtual reality to understand what it's like to be out in space. We have to use a lot of tools because we're up there. We are the guys who are fixing the spacecraft inside and out. To practice microgravity, we have this huge pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And here we actually get in spacesuits that will operate underwater with an umbilical to supply our air. Generally, we have a backpack that actually in real life does that. So we practice all the things that we might do on a spacewalk there. This is Kazakhstan. This is a Soyuz rocket, like I was mentioning, that's going to space. It's a stage rocket, so parts of it come off as the top part gets to space. This is inside the spacecraft with our little gravity meter right there. And we're on our way. We're on our journey. So it's about 6 hours nowadays. Used to be 2 days to get to space. And on our way, we look at the planet. We see the aurora. We see lightning over the Earth. We see stars. It's pretty spectacular. But the best thing in the sky is our new home, the International Space Station. So on this amazing International Space Station, which all those pieces and parts were put together in space, we live and we work. There's all sorts of things that we're doing in there. We're doing science experiments, for example. All sorts of science from all over universities and schools all over the place. We're taking medical samples and putting them in a freezer of ourselves, because we're a science experiments. We're doing experiments with fire, for example. And then, like I mentioned, things break inside and outside of the spacecraft, so sometimes we have to go out and do spacewalks to fix that. And then we just have to live in space, right? So you have to know how to wash your hair, go to the bathroom, all that kind of stuff. But pretty much our favorite place is the cupola, and that's where we take a lot of our pictures. Here we are undocking from the space station. We all learn a different language. We learn Russian, so we could fly with our Russian colleagues. That's the Russian Soyuz as it's going away from the space station. As it's coming in through the atmosphere, that's the plasma right outside your window. We land under a parachute out on the steppes of Kazakhstan. And then we get ready to come home. So about 12 hours after we land, we're back at home. This is a little dedication to all the programs that have come before us. Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, the shuttle program. Without all of those programs, we wouldn't have this wonderful International Space Station. And without the International Space Station, we would be doing experiments to get ready to do the next things in space. Like the SLS rocket, which will take Orion, the spacecraft, back to the moon, and then maybe even farther than that. So that's what I call my little vacation from Earth. We go for about 6 months at a time when we go up to the International Space Station. Thank you. But it's only part of a big program. We have a goal. And that's why I'm so happy to be talking to people who are shorter than me, because you're all part of that goal. And our goal is to get us to Mars, right? So we're in the middle of this journey with the Hubble Space Telescope, of course, right up top left, the International Space Station. And right now we're here with this commercial crew vehicles, which we're working with companies all over the United States, in particular Boeing and SpaceX, to create spacecraft to take us, the astronauts, up to the International Space Station. But we got a lot of things to do in the meantime. And then, of course, here at the end, there's a bunch of landers and rovers, right? We've had things go to Mars, right, already? But, you know, they're small, and they can't really put a person in there. It doesn't have oxygen generation. It doesn't have carbon dioxide removal systems. It doesn't have a place for you to go to the bathroom in those little spacecraft. We have to make a bigger spacecraft and some place where people can actually live on Mars eventually. So all those spacecraft that are at Mars, you know, in my human-centric attitude, I look at them and think, oh, they're all looking for a good place for us to land. Actually, for you guys to land, right? They're looking for a good home for us to be when we get onto Mars. So that's what those guys are doing. But in the meantime, hopefully we're setting up a good foundation to get those spacecraft, all that logistics train, to go to Mars. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Right now, we're working with a couple companies, like I mentioned, Boeing and SpaceX, to create brand new spacecraft. The Boeing Starliner and the SpaceX Dragon, these two vehicles. So the Starliner is going to launch on an Atlas V rocket. It's a rocket that's launched before with a lot of satellites, but we have not ever put a human on it. So this will be the first time we're going to incorporate a human on this type of rocket. These spacecraft, both of them, the Starliner and the Dragon, are pretty much automated. They're like, you know, they have sequences or systems inside that you really shouldn't have to, on a normal basis, do anything, they should take you from launch all the way up to rendezvous, dock to the International Space Station, and then we would sort of shut them down a little bit, and then they'll undock and then come home, all on their own. Now there are controls inside, so we can work with them just in case we have a problem, and for our, what we call situational awareness. What's cool about the Dragon spacecraft, it has touchscreen displays. This is the very first time that we're incorporating that type of technology that you guys have all on your iPhones right now that I'm watching here. All that technology has not been incorporated into spacecraft before. For example, the shuttle was essentially 1970s technology. It had a number of switches and things like that that you had to interact with, not a touchscreen. And these new spacecraft will have small screens, or screens rather, and then a few number of switches. So it's pretty cool technology that we're getting into. I'm going to show you one more video, because this is not just PowerPoints. This is not just something that somebody's thinking about. This hardware is all coming together. It's happening. I've been really lucky, like Mike said, to work with 3 other people in our office, Bob Benkin, Eric Bowe, and Doug Hurley, to have, for the last 3 years, go to all these companies and see what they're doing. Try on their spacesuits. Tell them if they fit, how they fit, are they okay? Look at their displays, see if it makes sense, if we understand it. Look at their seats. Watch their engine tests. Watch their parachute tests. Watch us at Kennedy Space Center, where these rockets and these spacecraft will launch from. Watch them recreate the launch pads and the access arm, where the astronauts will come up to where the level is, where they'll have to get in the spacecraft and walk out to the spacecraft. It's pretty incredible, and it's a huge amount of investment and money that these companies are putting forward to make this happen. So I say all that because there's a little music with this, so I'm not positive I'll be able to talk through it, but I'll try to highlight a couple things. But I also say all that because it's not far away. This is next year, you guys. And it's not far away physically either. It's just down in Florida. So I hope you guys take the time when this all starts to happen. Go down there, and I'll be waving to you from the window. So let me show this next little video for a second. So we have to remember where we're going, right? We're going to the International Space Station. That's the goal of these spacecraft. It's called low Earth orbit. So we've already incorporated commercial partners in some of our science. I alluded to it really quickly in the video. And now we're getting ready to do it for crew. So they have already come up with ways, like science experiments from universities, from companies that we've been taking up there already. And now it's, like I said, time for crew. So this is the parachute system, the launch pad cooling system for the rockets, the new space suits, the displays, the seats, the outer shell of the spacecraft, the landing. One will land in water, one will land on land. So we got to test all that out. Parachutes, new materials that are going into making these spacecraft, new processes to make these spacecraft better, simulators, new simulators. So all of this is going into making these spacecraft better and better and newer and safer for all of us to go fly. Okay, so back again. It's all back to you guys, right? Why are we doing all this? We're doing all this to understand these new technologies that are out there and incorporate them into spacecraft, so we can incorporate them into spacecraft like SLS and Orion that will take you guys to Mars. Are you ready to do that? Yeah. All right. What's that? Definitely. All right. I like that. I like that. All right. So with that, that's just sort of a quick preview of what we're doing in human spaceflight. I know that there's some questions out there. Somebody had already asked me one earlier, but I would love to see some hands if you guys want to ask a couple questions. How about that? Yes, ma'am, right here. What did I do for entertainment on the space station? Wow, that's a good question, because I was up there for a long time, right? I was up there for 6.5 months the first time, and about 4 months the second time. So yeah, sometimes you might get bored, but I tell you, it's really cool. So a lot of the things that I did was I took pictures out the window, like I showed you, right? I called and talked to my friends. I wrote a journal while I was up there. We actually had some TV, like shows that were already programmed that we could watch on the computer. And when I was up there, the Olympics were going on, so we got the Olympics on our computer so we could watch the Olympics. So that was sort of nice. That was very cool. All right. Yes, sir. When they're landing in water, what happens with the parachute? Okay, so that's a great question actually. So, and it's actually a really good question for when you land on land too, because when I landed on the Soyuz spacecraft, the thing lands and it's a little bit like a car crash, right? It's a little bit hard, right? You're laying on your back, the thing comes down and lands. And the big parachute's huge, and the wind takes the parachute and it pulls the spacecraft over, and you like bounce around for a little while. So it's good that you have a really good seat and you're strapped in. Same thing in the water. Once it lands in the water, you want to get rid of that parachute. So there's a cutting system. So we might press a button and then it will cut the parachute to go off so it doesn't bounce you around or drag you down underwater. Wow, that's a really awesome question. Pretty cool. Yes, sir. How many backflips did you do? Well, you know what? I told you I watched the Olympics, right? And those guys had nothing on us up there. Well, okay, there's no gravity in space, so, you know, that was a little bit of a problem, or not a problem for us. We could do tons of backflips again and again and again. But, you know, the space station, you saw how big it is, right? Going through the tunnel there, it's not too big. So if you bounce around too much, you're going to start hitting your head on the wall and stuff. So you have to be a little bit careful. Yes, ma'am? How did we get out of the water when I was in the spacecraft? Well, luckily for us, you know, the spacecraft that are here, in earlier times, they landed in the U.S. Spacecraft, they landed in the water. The SpaceX Dragon is going to land in the water, and it will have a ship that will be waiting for it. And just like in the old times, the ships was waiting for it. And then there's a crane that they'll take the crane and they'll lift it up onto the deck, and then they'll get the astronauts out that way. If there's a problem when we land in the water, we have all the equipment. We have a little life preserver, we have a little boat, a little raft, a rubber raft that we could throw out of the spacecraft, or we could jump into that too, just in case. But for most nowadays, we don't land in the water except for the Dragon, and that they'll have a boat waiting for them.
Sonny, we have
Yes?
a question back here.
Okay, go ahead.
How do you use the bathroom?
Yeah, maybe we can turn up the whole lights and so I can sort of see everybody too. Yeah.
That was the, how do you go to the bathroom?
Oh, okay. How do we go to the bathroom? Everybody wants to know about the bathroom. Actually, I did do a little video to show how that all happens. If you guys are interested, it's on YouTube, and it's if you just Google Sunny Williams International Space Station Tour and toilet, I bet you will go right to it. But I will give you a little preview of how the toilet works right here, just so maybe you can, in your mind's eye, I'll try to describe it so you can understand. Okay, so there's two things, right? Number one and number two, right? Okay? So number one is pretty special. I'll just tell you that, and I'll tell you why afterwards. Number one, you go in, there's a little bit of a hose, and the hose has a little suction, and so you go number one in this little hose, and you just sort of hold it like right about here, and then you go number one. That's pretty simple and easy, right? Number two is a little tricky. In this International Space Station, there's like a little pot. It's like a little canister. It has a little lid on the top. The little lid is only about that big. So in my video, and I will tell you now too, you have to have pretty good aim. In other words, you have to sort of figure out how to put your body there so everything is going in the right direction. And I'll tell you, everybody's body is different, right? So everything inside of here, the way all the little tubes go in through you and out, where the number two comes out, is different. So you sort of have to practice a little bit to perfect this. So it's, like I said, a little tricky, but you learn pretty quick because you have to go number two all the time, right? Every day you'll have to go. Anyway, so in that little pot, in that little hole, there's a little bag, and the little bottom of the bag has little perforations, and there's a little like vacuum pulling that bag down. And as you go, it pulls the number two down into that bag. You release the top of the bag, which is like a little Ziploc, and shove it real quickly down into that little can and close the lid. Otherwise, it will fly back out again. It may fly back out again. So you want to keep it down in there. And everybody uses that can for about, I don't know, a week or so, and then it's getting pretty full, and the probability of that little thing flying out is going to be pretty high. And then you say, okay, that's enough. And you put the cap on, and we're ready to throw that. We undo that little can from its place where it's sitting, and we put it in one of our cargo vehicles. So part of the reason we have a robotic arm is we have these cargo vehicles that come up to the space station, hover real close, and we use the robotic arm and grab it, and then dock it to the space station. Inside there is food and water and experiments and all that kind of cool stuff. We get that all out of those spacecraft, and we put all those cans of poop into that spacecraft, and then let it go back through the atmosphere. It burns up, and nobody knows the difference. So anyway, we're pretty green. We have solar rays. We get rid of our trash that way. Now, does anybody want to know why the number 1 stuff is really important? Oh, I don't know. I'll tell you later because it will distract the whole thing. But if somebody wants to know, they can ask me that question. I'll tell you a little bit later. Yes, sir. Yeah. Very nice to meet you too, sir.
What are the major challenges in going to Mars this coming 2030? Especially we as FLLP, are we researching like food growth?
Are we what? I'm sorry. Last
Food
part.
growth?
Food growth?
Yeah.
So what are the major challenges for going to Mars? That's a great question. So part of the reason we have the International Space Station and we live up there and we're doing experiments on ourselves and on equipment and on new processes, new materials, new pieces of equipment is to understand how all of us and all that stuff will last in space for a long time and will last on another planet. So we're trying to figure that out. Some of the challenges, of course, are radiation. So when we're outside, when you guys are outside, some of you probably get sunburn, right? But if you're outside our atmosphere, you will definitely get sunburn. Not only get sunburn, you'll get some radiation that might affect your health. And so you have to be careful about that. So we have to design spacecraft that will be good for that. We have to understand how our bones are going to stay good while we're on the long trip going to Mars. On the International Space Station, we have exercise equipment, we have a treadmill, we have a bicycle, we even lift weights with vacuum. It's pretty cool. And that's how we're able to come back to Earth and be strong and be able to walk around like this. So we have to worry about all that. Other challenges is once you get there, do you have food? You sort of talked about that a little bit. If anybody saw The Martian, the movie The Martian? It's pretty awesome. It's a great, or read the book. So we have to figure out how we'll have food there. We might have to have a logistics, a bunch of other rockets that are going to launch and plant stuff there, so it'll be okay for a little while. So all that we have to figure out. What is what? I don't know. Let's talk afterwards. How about that? Let's get to a couple more questions. How about that? Okay, yes, sir.
So when the spacecraft lands in the water, surviving the entry and then landing in the water or land, and in the land, when the ship comes by to pick it up, what happens to the spacecraft after that? Do they one strap it to let the spacecraft sink into the ocean after picking up one of the astronaut, or three? Some other way around.
Yeah, great question. What are we doing? We're working towards making sure those spacecraft are reusable. Remember I mentioned that we're green? We're actually getting really green. SpaceX has already done that. Some of their cargo vehicles, in the beginning of the last movie, it's talked about cargo. They send spacecraft up there just with cargo, and those are the ones we grab with the robotic arm. Those spacecraft have come back in the water. They've been picked up with the ship. They've been taken to the processing plant. They've been cleaned up, and then they're used again. Isn't that pretty cool? The ones that have humans in it probably will be cleaned up, and then they'll be used for cargo. Probably we want a brand new car every time we go to space, right? We don't want to have a used car when we're going to space. So probably the humans will always have a new spacecraft, but the old ones will be used for cargo. So it's pretty awesome. We're already starting to do that. Yeah, great question. Any in the back, maybe? Yeah?
You mentioned about experiments with fire. I think you briefly mentioned that about on the space station. So could you please elaborate on those experiments?
Sure. To the gentleman's question right here, up here, he asked what are those things that we're worried about. We want to make spacecraft and have clothes and spacecraft that is fire retardant, right? So part of the experiments that we're doing with also our other NASA research centers, this one has to do with the Land Research Center up in Ohio. We're using all sorts of little materials and different types of plastics and seeing with different oxygen or other gases if those things will catch on fire. So luckily, we don't want to do that everywhere, right? In the middle of the space station, we don't want to try, making a fire because that's pretty dangerous in space, right? You don't want to have a fire up there. So we have a microgravity glove box where essentially it's like a glove box here on Earth. It's separated from the inside of the space station. We put our hands in with gloves and we can make the fire in that small little area. So part of all of that is exploration, trying to understand materials in spaces with different gases, different airflows, and different, what their burning temperatures and if they would be usable in future spacecraft. So that's why we're part of the reason we're doing that.
Sunny?
Yeah, here. Okay.
Are aliens real?
Oh, there you are. Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
Are aliens real?
Are aliens real? Oh, that's a big secret. I'm not sure we're going to talk about that. No, honestly, you know, it's pretty cool. You guys go outside and you live here. Some of you live in New York, right? And other people live in places where there's maybe not as much light pollution. The only problem with New York is it has too many lights. And it has the Yankees. But besides that, the lights here make it a little bit difficult for you to go outside and see all the stars. I know you probably go on vacation and you probably go places where there's not so many lights and you can see like there's millions of stars, like wow. But actually, if you go to space and you're above our environment, our atmosphere, you know, atmosphere is essentially water in the atmosphere. And you know, when you go in a swimming pool or in a lake and you open your eyes, it's all blurry, right? So really, here on Earth we have blurry vision because we can't really see through all that water very good. So when you get outside of the atmosphere, you see there's millions and millions, probably billions of stars. And I really do think, you know, we're flying close to Earth, and I think there's got to be, the statistics have to say, there's got to be a star out there that has planets around it that have life on them. So I say not yet. I didn't see them, but maybe you might see them one day. So I hope that happens. They might be nice. I'm hoping they're nice. I hope they're Red Sox fans. Okay. Yes, sir. With what? Do we do experiments with plasma? Fire, I think, is as far as we go. I'm not, as a human, I don't know if anybody's done plasma experiments up there yet. So I would have to do a little research to know a little bit more about that. I know we do experiments with spacecraft and plasma. We launched a precursor for that Orion spacecraft, and it went 3,000 miles away from Earth and then came back on a trajectory just like the moon, which is really a hot entry. And we were testing out the heat shield to see how that would work in the parachute system. So we do, and the whole spacecraft had test thermocouples all over it to understand the plasma environment. So we do some experiments like that, but it's, I don't know if one's on the space station specifically. Okay, how about over here?
What if you get like sick or you get the flu on the journey? Like it could spread easily because all of you astronauts are close together.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you're living pretty close proximity with your friends. It's like you guys go to school in the beginning of September, right? And you haven't seen your friends for a long time. Lots of big hugs. You come home and you got a cold. Same thing up in the space station, right? We're living pretty close to each other. So to help prevent that, we actually live in quarantine. What that means is we don't live in our house. We live in a place that has, you know, bedrooms, and it's like an apartment for all of us. And they give us special foods, and they ask us really not to see our young kids in your family, because young kids like yourself, you know, just like I was saying, might get a cold and stuff like that, because you guys hang around with a lot of young kids because you're at school, right? So they ask you for the last week before you go fly not to do that. You can see your family, you can talk to your family, but try not to, you know, give them the big hug and stuff like that. It's a little bit heartbreaking, but the reason being is just because, like you said, is you don't want to go up to space, have a cold, and then give everybody else the cold also. But just in case you do get sick, not only a cold, but whatever you get, we do have a big medical kit, and we get training as we go down to the medical center in Houston, and we go to the operating room, we go to the emergency room. We know how to take our own blood. We know how to do CPR on each other, and just in case somebody has a problem, we know how to give a shot. And we also have doctors on the ground in mission control all the time. In case we have a problem, we can just give them a call and say, help us out. You know, this person has this. We can do a video conference, and so they can look at the person to see if they, you know, if they look sick or what the story is. So we try to take care of each other, and part of, I'll make one more point about that. One of the biggest and hardest things to becoming an astronaut is the medical test. So you want to be healthy, you want to stay healthy. And why? Is because we're not always up there with a doctor. You might be up there with, you know, a couple other pilots or, you know, an engineer, and, you know, I don't want to trust Mike Massimino to give me a, you know, to work on my heart. You know, that's a little bit scary, right? So part of the reason, what we do is we try to stay really healthy beforehand, And so that we can be healthy up in space, and then being healthy up in space so you can come back to Earth and you can adapt right back to Earth again.
I think we do another question
Sure.
up here.
Yeah.
How does the spacesuit protect you from the sun?
Oh, how does the spacesuit protect you from the sun? Great question. So sometimes we go out and do a spacewalk. You saw the big suits there, right? Both Mike and myself have done spacewalks, and we've had to wear that big, huge suit. And that big, huge suit actually has 17 layers of material on it. And so all of that material protects us from heat and cold, and protects us from the sun and from some of the radiation. It's not as good as actually being inside the spacecraft, inside the space station. That protects us even more. But the spacesuit does protect us. And another thing it protects us from is micrometeorites. If a little teeny micrometeorite came and hit the suit, we've tested those materials so that all of those 17 layers would dissipate some of that energy and hopefully not make a hole in it. We have actually extra oxygen in our backpack that we're out there, but we don't want to get hit with micrometeorites, and our suit is the one that protects us from not only the sun and getting a sunburn, but hot and cold and those micrometeorites. Pretty cool suit. All right. Yes, ma'am. How did I feel the first time when I went to space? Oh my God, it was so awesome. So I launched with three other rookies, three other first-time flyers. And I was on the middeck with these 2 other first-time flyers, and we were getting ready to go, so we walked out to the launch pad. It was a beautiful night. We saw this rocket, and for the first time it's fueled, so it's like breathing. It's fueled with cryogenic hydrogen and oxygen that's really super cold, and the big external tank which has all that gas in it, it has a big like a koozie, like you put a Coke in a koozie, or it has a koozie that's around it to help it, but it's still cold. It's super, super cold, so all the steam is coming off. You're like, oh my God, this thing looks like alive. So we go up the elevator, and it was a little bit scary because we were there at the business end where all the rocket engines are, right? So that's where all the fire comes out. So we go in the elevator, we go up the elevator and get inside the spacecraft, and it felt like, oh, I've done this before. I've done this a million times in the simulator in Houston because we practiced getting in the spacecraft. And so it felt normal, sort of get all buckled in, sort of take a nap a little bit, and then the countdown starts, right? Things start happening. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's starting to go. And about 6 seconds before, or about 5 minutes before launch, they start these little engines, and those little engines are the ones that move the flight control system. So if you guys are on an airplane, sometimes look out the window, there's little parts of the airplane that are moving. Same type of thing on a space shuttle, those things start to move. And that's way down like by my feet, and I'm sitting here by my head, so that's a big moment arm. So you can feel that all of a sudden, like, whoa, things are moving, something's happening. And then at 6 seconds, the main engines way down here start to fire, but they are actually not under the center of gravity of the spacecraft. They're a little bit off to the side because of the solid boosters also. So the spacecraft actually turns a little bit. It's called twang. And you can feel that way up at the top. And then when the solid boosters light, you get propelled off the Earth. And it starts feeling like, oh my gosh, it's rumbling, because those solid boosters are like cake mix materials. There's like holes, air pockets in there, and so as it's burning through all that cake mix material, it's like popping. So if you see video of, not like Soyuz here, but if you see video of shuttle, you see people's heads bopping around a little bit. That's because of all those solid rocket booster air bubbles. So that takes about 1.5 minutes, those pop off, and then the ride gets super smooth, and you start to accelerate really, really, really fast. And it feels like an elephant is sitting on your chest, because that's the G-force, but it's right here, and it's squishing you. And we were warned about this before. Other people have flown before told us, but it's like 30 seconds, you're like, I can't breathe. But then it goes away, and it goes away because you're getting through the thinner and thinner and thinner parts of the atmosphere, so the spacecraft can go really, really fast, because there's not that much air there, so it's super, and then it's going really fast. In about 8 minutes, the main engine shut down, and then it's totally quiet, and things start to float. I mean, even your arms will start to float if you're not thinking about it for a second, but then your brain kicks in and you just put your arms back down again, because this is the way you always are, right? You're not having your arms floating around. But if you ever see people in space who are sleeping, their arms are sort of floating up like this, because you have no control over it. Now everything is floating. So I take your gloves off, and usually in the simulator, we just put the gloves on our stomach like this. You don't put the 2 gloves here because you're sitting on your back. And they start to float away. Then you're like, oh crap, I got to stick them under my butt or something so it doesn't move. Then take your helmet off, And usually in the simulator, this thing is heavy, and it's like just pops off and it's starting to float. Grab that out of the, out of the space there, put it, tuck it on with some Velcro or something. And we were just cracking up like, oh my God, we're in space. This is so cool. It's quick, and it's pretty awesome. Then, I'm sorry to keep going, just because I have to tell you a little bit about this other awesome phenomena. Anyway, so then you're flying around because you're doing your job, right? I was on the mid-deck, the bottom side. We were trying to get all the sleeping bags out, get the toilets set up, get the whole spacecraft ready to go. Flying around like a crazy person. I flew up to the flight deck where the commander was, and there's the windows. And that's when I saw the Earth was round for the first time. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. He says, gives me a high five, says, congratulations. I fly back down to the, congratulations, you come to space. I fly back down to the mid-deck and immediately threw up. So I'm like, oh no, this is terrible. And luckily we had these really cool bags that have like a plastic bag, and then on the top that's terry cloth around there, so you can sort of wipe up your face and put that bag in the trash and then continue on working. But honestly, what happens is, your neurovestibular system, which means your inner ear, right, you guys? When you turn your head real fast, you're not going to fall. But in part of that, there's a sensor in your ear that's telling your brain what's going on. In space, part of that sensor package in your ear gets a little bit messed up, and your brain can't figure it out for a little bit. But I went to sleep. Next day, I felt fine, felt like I've been in space all my life. So it's pretty cool when you're healthy, your body can adapt pretty well. Yes, ma'am? I was mentioning it's pretty awesome. Actually, maybe I skipped over that a little bit. When we started to take off, the three of us on the mid-deck, we were so happy. It was like being on a roller coaster. Has anybody here been on a roller coaster before? So you're going up to the top and you're like, oh my God, it's nervous, 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 and then it starts going down and you're just like, ah, you can't stand it. So we were yelling and screaming on the mid-deck. Again, I told you, we were three new guys. And the guys up on the flight deck actually had some things to do, with the spacecraft. They're like, would you shut up down there? You're making too much noise. We can't hear mission control. But we were just having a lot of fun. So it was pretty awesome. Very, very fun. Okay?
I have a question. What's your favorite food when you're in space?
Oh, that's a good question. What's my favorite food in space? I had lots of really good food up there. We have a standard menu, and that gets a little bit repetitive. And so your family and friends get to send up some food in some of those visiting spacecraft that I was telling you. Before they're filled up with poop, we pull out the really good stuff that's in there from your family. And I had, on my first flight, I actually had some samosas. I think there's a couple Indian people in the crowd here, right? So that was pretty cool. I was like, wow, home sweet home. And then actually on both flights, again, I'm from Massachusetts, I'm from Boston, and there's this stuff called fluff. Anybody familiar with it? It's like marshmallow fluff, and makes marshmallow fluff with peanut butter makes a really good sandwich called a fluffernutter. We don't have bread up there, but we have tortillas, and so I'd make a fluffernutter on a tortilla before every spacewalk. It was like my go-to good luck food. So everybody has like little, superstitions, and my fluff was my superstition food.
Sunny, we're
Yeah?
going to take one up here.
Yep.
Way up here. We're
Yep.
going to take one up here, and then you take one down there, and then we'll move on to...
Okay, sounds good.
Did you encounter any problems with muscle wasting?
Did I encounter any problems with muscle wasting? Absolutely. If you're not, being in space is really fun and cool, and it looks awesome, right? But we have that exercise equipment that I was talking about. We have a treadmill, we have a bike, we have a bar which you're able to put weight on through vacuum to lift weights, to actually do like a bench press or a deadlift or a squat. And you need to do that because here on Earth, gravity is having that force on your ankles and your hips, and as you walk around, your bones are getting stimulated and they're growing, and your muscles are making you be able to do that, right? Your muscles are able to make you move. But in space, you don't even use your legs. You don't even have to use your legs, and all that will start immediately wasting away. And so that's why we have to work out every day. We did probably almost like an hour of aerobic and an hour of weightlifting practically every day while we're up there. So those are actually, going back to your question here, that's another problem that we're going to have to solve when we go to Mars, right? We're going to have to figure out how people are going to have good bones and muscles. So it's a big problem, and we're going to have to work on that. All right, one more over here. How about this young lady? Yes.
Do you have like a radio that do you have a radio that you can communicate, not like the people that help you
Just anybody?
Yeah.
So do we have a radio on the space station that we can communicate to everybody, not just the ones who help us in mission control? As a matter of fact, yes. We have, anybody do ham radio here by chance? Yeah, we have a ham radio on board, and we can talk to school kids, because I know that there's a program that school kids can make a ham radio and antenna and then talk to us on the space station. And as we fly overhead, people here on Earth who are, well versed in ham know when the people who want to do it will have the spacecraft fly overhead, and they could hook us up with you guys. And so we just dial up the ham radio and we can talk to you from space. I got to do it actually where my dog lived in Massachusetts. My sister and a young boy went out there who made an antenna, went out to a lighthouse, and I was able to talk right to them. I could hear my dog barking on the ham radio. So pretty darn cool, yeah. If you guys want to do that, you should look that up, and it's pretty fun to hear the classic crackling as the spacecraft comes into view. You can talk for probably 5 minutes, and then it's out of view. So very cool. Hey, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I hope it was fun. So thank you very much, and I'm going to pass this over to Ellen.
So any of you who'd like to get an autograph with Sunny or take a photo with Sunny, if you would line up along the stairs along here,
Yeah. It is. It's basically a stampede to get a picture with Sunny. Oh, that's cool.
I think it's more than a stampede.
It's more than a stampede. Nice. All right, so they are going
Everyone,
to...
please line up along the stairs. We're going to wrap the line back around the theater, and it can come down the other side. Thank you.
Wow. Let's zoom this all the way out, dude.
Yeah, that was great.
There we go. All right, we're fine there. Let's point this way. What do you think of those questions from the kids?
Those kids were asking very, very good questions. There was a kid that asked about plasma flow.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, if we had like the news press right on one side, and we had the kids on the other side, and we were taking bets on who asks better questions. Who's your money on? Yeah,
taking the kids, man.
Taking the kids.
Really good questions.
So many good questions from the kids out there. It's
awesome.
so cool.
It's great.
Anyways, y'all, that was astronaut Sunita Williams. She's doing a talk about sort of living and working in space. Talking about commercial crew song.
Yeah, the upcoming commercial crew, yeah.
Yeah, so that is we're live. Like, we're here running the camera and stuff, right? I've got Twitch chat mounted on the tripod and everything. And we just wanted to share that with you today. That is the last stream for the day, I believe, but the Space and Science Festival is still going on.
Oh yeah, no, we'll be back.
Yeah, all day tomorrow. We'll not only have our Kerbal Space Academy booth over on Hangar Deck 3, so if you're in New York City and you want to stop on by, you can come to the museum and check out the booth. There's all sorts of other cool things going on with the Space and Science Festival. There's a lot of NASA booths.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's a lot of places where you can talk with NASA scientists, you can look at some of the gear that they've brought. We had a couple spacecraft teams that you can talk to. I mean, I haven't even had a chance to walk around and see everything.
Oh no, yeah, no, there's so much stuff here.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
There really is. And we're going to be doing more presentations like this. So expect some streams from the booth, expect some more presentations. We'll see Sunny again.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow we've got Richard Garriott.
Oh yeah.
You know Richard Garriott?
I do.
The guy who made a video game.
Video games. And his dad
was an astronaut. Yeah, his dad was an astronaut. Richard Garriott made a video game, Ultima, right? And used his video game money to buy a ticket into space.
Oh, yeah.
So he flew up to the space station.
Yeah.
We're going to talk with him tomorrow. There's other presentations from JPL and stuff.
That's a long line. I think everybody in the theater is signing autographs.
Yeah.
Like, is in that line for autographs. The whole theater just shifted to that side.
Yeah.
Like, you feel the boat list a little bit. It's like,
the boat is listing over. Anyways, folks, everybody got lined up over here to get
Don't stand on the middle platform in a group. Please line up on the stairs.
No middle platform.
No middle platform. Everybody's getting lined up to get autographs with the astronauts here. Fantastic to hear the talk. Again, we know that this isn't a normal Twitch stream. We're not sitting there constantly with the camera on us, like providing commentary like we do with launches and stuff, right? This is really about sharing what Sunny was talking about. Listen to the awesome questions from the kids.
Oh yeah,
These were such good questions.
Please also don't lean on the mesh siding. Thank you.
Don't lean on the mesh siding either. But we are going to go ahead and shut it down for now, y'all. And I guess I'm not astronaut Sunita Williams, so let's go logo only like that and hit save changes. Logo only, save changes.
I'm not either.
Yeah, there we go, that's better. Anyways, y'all, it's the Space and Science Festival.
On the mesh siding along the stairs.
We're in New York City. We're at the Intrepid Sierra and Space Museum. I'm Das.
I'm EJ.
Nice.
We're actually going to have to keep you clear of the stage. Please don't stand on the stage.
And be sure to tip your waitress.
Yeah, we'll be here all week. All weekend, actually. We'll go ahead and shut the stream down for now.
True.
And we will. It is. I mean, it's, yeah.
It's not wrong.
It's an accurate statement, as it turns out. We're going to go ahead and shut the stream down for now. We appreciate y'all hanging out. Enjoy the streams over the rest of the weekend. For now, later, nerds.
See you guys.
Do you have like a thing you say when you sign off?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And give a thumbs up.
That's a good thing to say. I like it. Yeah. Nice. We'll see y'all later.
2 thumbs up.
Just a reminder that the line is going to go up along the stairs, not in front of the stage.